Good day, my name is Innocent Mvulayakata and this is another Timveni exclusive. Each and every year since 1953 in America, they award Teacher of the Year award. This is to appreciate the educators who have done tremendous and extraordinary work in their respective schools, and they take an extra mile in educating young Americans. Over the years up to this year, this award has been given, but the 2016 National Teacher of the Year is a special guest for me and here at Timveni, but also a special woman. Lucky for her, she is the last to be awarded the award by President Obama. My guest is Jahana Hayes. She has been described as the epitome of an American dream. Now I have her in the studio. Jahana, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Your story is inspiring. I'll just go straight. You got pregnant at 17 and dropped out of school.
Did.
What was going through your mind when you dropped out of school?
Well, I was always a very good student. I always did well in school. For no particular reason than I enjoyed school. My grandmother raised me, my brother and I, and in the American landscape, we would have been considered a very poor family from a very poor community. And I just knew that that wasn't where I wanted to live as an adult. And I wasn't sure how to do that, but I really thought if I educated myself. When I found myself in this situation, I realized as much as I wanted it and as hard as I tried, sometimes it's very difficult to juggle when life gives you all these extreme circumstances. So I had to find a job, I had to work. And it wasn't so much dropping out. They sent me to an alternative school program for girls. And it was very different because I recognized very quickly that I was not receiving the same education, that I was not being challenged in the same way. It was just a place to house girls. And I was devastated by that. So much of who I am as a teacher really is personal, and it involves making sure that education is equitable for everyone, that no matter who you are or where you live or what circumstance that you are in, you can rest assured that you are receiving that same high quality education.
Let's talk about where you are or where you're from. You're from Westbury. Waterbury, Connecticut.
Yes.
What is the environment like? I understand there's poverty.
Yes. Different from Malawian poverty, but when you look comparatively speaking in America, we are one of the lower performing districts, very large urban area, limited access to resources, and some of the surrounding districts are very affluent communities. So kids really have a very negative perception of themselves. The future can be very depressing at times. I teach in that same community that I grew up in, so I have a different level of investment. Because I recognize that I was each and every one of those students. And I think through me, they can begin to imagine that maybe if I try hard or work hard, things can be just a little different, and I really am purposeful in my interactions with students. I try to remind my colleagues, that these students are important and they're special, and don't judge them by who you think they are or the perception that you have of this community. Give them the opportunity to hold their head high and show you how much potential they have.
You believe in your students so much that you invest even your own personal resources in after-school programs.
Yes.
And just to keep them motivated. In the testimonials I was going through, one of your students said, if it weren't for you, she wouldn't have been at the university.
Yes.
What pushes you to keep on glowing all this positive energy in class? Sometimes learners can be difficult.
Well, I just know that I am so blessed that so many people have poured into me, and I know that I have an obligation to do the same. And, if nothing else amazing or good never happens to me, if I never receive another blessing, I've already had enough. So I think that from this point forward, it is my obligation to sow that seed into someone else. I have had, I don't have much even still, but I've had a tremendously blessed life. I have children who are happy and healthy. I have an amazing husband, and I love the work that I do. And to me, that is a rich and full life. So I always grew up believing that your gifts are not your own, that when you see inequity or an injustice, you have an obligation, a human and a moral obligation to help improve or change that culture or that society. And I believe that the way that I do that is through education.
You are a history teacher.
Yes.
You teach civic education,
yes.
social science, and you also help writing a curriculum of African American history.
Yes.
Tell me, these are all accomplishments. It's not an easy feat to be part of a team which is developing a curriculum.
Well, it wasn't actually part of a team. At my school, we have a large minority population. And by minority, I mean we have a lot of African American students and Hispanic students, probably about 70%. Our curriculum did nothing to address the very specific needs of these students or help them to understand and celebrate their history. And when I went to my administration, I said, why don't we teach this? I don't understand. Initially, I was told that there was limited interest. So, I worked with some of our district supervisors who were very supportive, and I developed a curriculum with a group of teachers, and we got the funds to order textbooks, and I have been teaching this class almost with a waiting list every year because students are interested in learning their history, interested in learning, and celebrating the positive parts of their history. Students didn't understand the lineage from which they came. All they knew was, the last several decades where they see decline and, decreased outcomes. And they really had no idea, that they hail from kings and queens and this is who they are, and did not have knowledge of all of the people before them who had worked so hard and been so accomplished in their fields. So I wanted to make sure that students left me knowing that, and not just my African American students, but white students as well, who really did not share that appreciation for their peers. So just nurturing empathy, creating understanding among students, it's really something that's very important and special to me.
As a history teacher, your education is not about the academics. You also have after-school programs.
Yes.
You have social work programs you undertake.
Yes.
Why do you feel education should also go back to the communities in terms of the kids getting involved in developing their own communities?
That's our responsibility. I read many years ago a quote by Dr. Martin Luther King, and he said, the purpose of education is twofold: to build knowledge and character. And I think so many educators come out of teacher preparation programs and they master the content and they memorize everything and they know how to write a lesson. And they really forget to connect to students and say, now, once you learn all this, what will you do with it? I feel most accomplished not when I have the highest achieving or highest performing students, but the students who recognize that whatever they have, they need to figure out a way to use it to serve. And that really is what my students are known for. That's what we've come to do in our community. And I know the shame that comes with being from a very poor community. So I really want my students to understand that you have the power to change your surroundings. If you invest back into your homes, into your neighborhoods, into your communities, then all the things that you do not like can eventually change.
Now, let me take you back to your early days. When you had a baby, mm-hmm. and you went to an alternative school, did you see back then that you would be a teacher, or you were just like, okay, I have a second chance, let me learn and do something else?
No, absolutely not. I always wanted to be a teacher. I think I was born to be a teacher. I was the little girl who would line up dolls and teach them all day. And I think that dream was deferred. But what I had to do was, really accept that I can achieve the same things. I just have to find a different way to do it. Not really compare myself to people around me. And instead of looking at the whole big picture, which can seem overwhelming and daunting, I said, I'm going to enroll in school. Let me finish this one semester. And I finished one semester, and I said, let me finish the second semester. So I went from a community college onto a bachelor's degree, onto a master's degree, onto a postgraduate degree. But I didn't really look at the end. I just, one step at a time. And before I knew it, I was at the end of a very long journey. And I look back and people ask me all the time, how did you do it? And I say, you just do it. You just do it. You take risks. You become fearless. You learn from your mistakes. You don't punish yourself for your mistakes. You just keep your eye steadfast on where you want to go.
About funding in education in America, being a community which is relatively poor,
Mm-hmm.
do you feel like your district gives you enough funding in education? Because, well, it's an issue.
Well, there's always room. I mean, if you ask a teacher, 90% of the budget should go to education. However, I recognize, and I'm learning in this role, that when my administrator says no to me, it's because he has to say yes to something else. But I've learned to be very creative. I don't let a lack of resources stop me. I try to figure out different ways. I have on my own applied for classroom grants. I've gotten money. I've partnered with businesses. So you really become really savvy in that way, because it's very easy to say, I can't do this because I don't have the money or the resources. You start to network. You work with people who have access to those resources, and things begin to happen.
And I take that's the same spirit you give to your learners as well, that if you don't have resources, that should not stop you.
Figure it out. That's like my kids always say. I say that all the time when students come, figure it out. Let's figure it out together. It's not enough to just say I can't or I don't have the resources. You figure it out.
Tell me, why do you get down to the level of understanding the children and be in their shoes when you're trying to change something, you're also learning from them?
Again, because I still see myself in them. At every point, I could have been one of my students. I was a brilliant girl, highly intelligent, doing very well in school. I was the parent of a single parent advocating for my children. I was an alternative school student. So I see myself in all these kids, and I know that, so often we talk about parents advocating on behalf of their students. I recognize that not everybody has a parent to do that. So in my role as a teacher, I have to ensure that I create the education that I would want my child to have, that I work on behalf of those students that have nobody else but me doing that. And it doesn't seem like really work. That's not the right word. It's just the right thing to do.
Now, you move from Waterbury, Connecticut to the White House.
Yes, that was kind of a big deal.
And you have your crystal apple in hand.
I have a crystal apple, yes.
Tell me the experience of being at the White House.
Oh
and
my gosh.
In the limelight and the center of attention.
Oh my gosh. Just to be celebrated in that way for doing, you never look for an award. Teachers are very altruistic people. You kind of work behind the scenes and push your students out. So to be celebrated in that way was unbelievable. But just knowing my journey and what my journey represents, I think there was something that resonated with so many young girls, so many young teachers, so many people, even in the Black community, who had kind of given up hope. So it wasn't just about me. It was a celebration of the profession. It was a celebration of the persistence of the human spirit. It was the White House, for crying out loud. So it just really, I could have never imagined in my entire life that I would go from, the neighborhood that I lived in to being celebrated at the White House. That's something that you can't plan for, you can't prepare for, and you just engage all of your senses and enjoy the experience.
And you're in the Oval Office.
Amazing.
Being accorded this platform, being
Yes.
at the White House and championing and putting out the voice, only not the hope, but also the challenges you have been able
Yes.
to surmount in the way. What do you think will change, let's say in the next 2-3 years? What do you
I
hope to see
think
change?
that there is an increased level of consciousness. It is, at the very beginning of this journey, I recognized that, I've been chosen for such a time as this. So in this time, I have to remind people that we have to make decisions that impact children. We have to deal with children as if they were our own. And I think it really forces educators, legislators, policymakers to think about the role they play in the educational journey of students and obligate them in a very different way to go above and beyond just the academics, to really begin to create structures in society that support education, that make it more equitable, that make opportunity more accessible. And I say that unapologetically, the things that are not going well and the things that are working, and just say, we're not placing blame here. We're not admiring the problem or talking about everything that's going wrong. Let's sit down and start working on solutions.
Then I'll just keep on moving chronologically. You were at the Ellen show. I saw the video when you were called to be a guest. Yes. You went bananas.
Yeah, a little bit, because I love Ellen. My kids, they laugh. My students laugh because I talk about her all the time. She loves to dance. I love to dance. I reference her all the time. So
you won Dancing with the Stars.
I did. Well, that's like a competition at our school where the teachers dance, and it's every year. It's a huge celebration where the teachers and the students have a dance competition. So the year before, I won this competition. So my students kept saying, we're going to write a letter. We're going to get you to go on Ellen so you can dance with her. So it was a conversation that had been ongoing. So for her to call the school and invite me to her show was really like the cream, and she's so kind. She's such a giver, and you don't come in contact with very many people who believe in the power of kindness, so for her to really exemplify that message kind of solidified what I believe in and what I tell my students, because the power of a smile, just treating people with dignity and respect goes a very long way, no matter who those people are, and that's what I promote every day. So to be on her stage in that platform, with that message was amazing.
Now you are in Africa. You're more like globetrotting right now. I know you're in Namibia. Which other countries did you visit?
No, on this trip I went to Namibia and then moved on to Malawi. I have a second trip planned to the north, to Algeria, Tunisia, and possibly Morocco.
Do you have... what do you have witnessed here in Malawi and of course in Namibia? Any connections to what you experienced at your school in Waterbury?
Well, I think we share some very similar challenges. Education is not that much different. People are not that much different. The circumstances surrounding those challenges may vary, but people want the same things. They want their children to be educated. They want to have a voice and an impact on the future. So I've seen that. I think what I've seen here, and I've said it many times, is that unquenchable thirst for knowledge, that we're people, and I remember feeling like that as a little girl, for no other reason than I think I deserve it, to want an education. And even though everything around you, every statistic, everything that you hear says something different, inside you have this, this yearning to just get that education no matter what you have to do. And I see teachers working here in conditions that would have someone who was faint at heart run away from the profession. But just to be so invested in students and just do whatever you need to do. And I think that you also have to remember that Malawi is a very young country, comparatively speaking. Mm-hmm. So I just am so excited about what the future will bring. And I think that there's this very inaccurate perception of the idea of charity. I saw people who wanted access to opportunities to improve their own lives. They wanted to work hard. They wanted to be given the tools to do that, which is very different than the perception of someone who, does nothing and waits for charity. So I am so fortunate to have seen that and firsthand, to experience that. I went to Salima, to a school for the blind, and I saw things that the brightest kids reading and writing, and wanting education and parents advocating for those kids, that is not much different than America. And I was so in awe of the work that those teachers have done. It was amazing.
The landscape, being, of course, the Malawi being a relatively, comparatively young country to America,
Yes.
but still, the landscape, do you feel like at 50 plus years of independence, do you feel like the development in your own observations, I know you've been here for a little while, very short while, but as a teacher, I know the experiences, as you say, I shared.
Well, I think that I had a very unique opportunity traveling with the U.S. Embassy. We were able to go out to some very rural villages and, different areas. So my time was not just concentrated in the city. So to see what has been done here in Lilongwe City, and then as you move out, it's not as developed. But you imagine as time moves on, some of those modernization and development that you see in the city. And I think about America, a lot of what has happened, this is a 300-year history, which is in the whole span of time still very short. Mm-hmm. But when I teach about, things from the 19th century just onto now the 21st century, the progress that we've made, change happens, very swiftly. If you look at America in the 1950s, it's a very different educational system, a very different set of ideas in that very short period of time. And we still have so much work to do, but you recognize that as people become educated, progress happens. So the fact that there is a huge cultural shift, that girls are being educated, that people are investing in the education of their children, I know enough to know, not just as a teacher, but as a parent, as a person, that as people become informed, they begin to change their circumstances. So the landscape will definitely change in the next 50 years.
For a Malawian girl child, how can you inspire her? Because, they are facing challenges. Some of them can be shared with what you experienced way back. But as a woman, you were a girl once. The same challenges they face are the same which you also overcame.
Well, it's funny because I don't think it's so much me. I represent something, but in a few hours, I'll leave the continent and go back to America. But I think it's people like, I came in contact with Faith at the U.S. Embassy, people who are from this country, who really have gone through insurmountable challenges, and they see these people every day. Linda in the Information Resources Center, people who kids can aspire to be, mentors who they can look up to. I think as they see more women, come into positions of authority and become educated, students emulate us. They look at their teachers and they admire them, they respect them, they want to be them. So as they encounter adults in the community, female journalists, people like that on a daily basis, that's what inspires girls.
Being a teacher beyond the curriculum, why is it important for a teacher to go beyond the curriculum? It'll be like, okay, I work from 8 to 5, and that ends there. Close the books, go home.
The classroom, the walls of your classroom are not your only learning environment. Kids have to, you can create sponges where they take advantage of every opportunity around them, where they learn from everything they see, and they really become invested. It's not just at school. Education is not only the job of the teacher. It's the teacher, the parents, the community members, the business leaders, all working in concert to improve outcomes for students.
Yourself has gone to an extent of cleaning streets,
yes,
building houses,
yes,
and cooking pancakes.
Yes.
Why all this trouble?
Because the streets were dirty. And kids need to know that, again, to whom much is given, much is expected. You cannot just feel so complacent that you're not concerned about the people around you. We saw a need, and I want my students to know that your job as an educated population is to address the needs of your community. So whatever that need may be, whether it's feeding the hungry or helping to build houses or cleaning the streets, we have a responsibility to hand over this world to the next generation better than we found it.
How do you balance, when you're in a classroom with your learners, how do you balance those who are bright and the not so bright learners for them to all feel they are benefiting from what you're teaching them?
I think that, a lot of your training in America surrounds differentiated instruction and, teaching to those populations. But I think, again, when I reflect on my life, I've had some very unique experiences that have helped me. I have two children that have very different learning styles. My daughter was very disciplined, did very well in school, really enjoyed school. My son did not, and he struggled. And I always imagine when I have students who have difficulty learning that this is somebody's child and their mother expects me to teach them. So you just become creative. You figure it out. You split your time. It takes a lot more planning, a lot more creative resources, a lot more intense instruction. But when you're committed to it, you just figure out a way to do it.
You talked of your husband.
Yes.
How, excuse me, how supportive has he been in this road from being a teacher to being the teacher of the year in Connecticut, now to being teacher of the year nationwide?
He has been so tremendously supportive. When I first got the call, they said, it's going to involve a lot of traveling, a minimum of about 200 trips this year. And I says, I really need to have a conversation with my family. And he said to me, we can do anything for a year. And he really was the one who reminded me that you deserve this. You've worked so hard for so long. I've watched you, toil for years without any acknowledgement. And, you deserve this. So he always reminds me of that. He has taken on a huge responsibility at home when I travel, when I'm not there. And just reminding me that this is an accomplishment and I worked hard for it. So I need to take the next year to just enjoy it and appreciate it.
What quote keeps you motivated on a daily basis? You have talked of faith being a blessing.
Absolutely. Well, prayer. I stay connected through prayer, and I always ask, what will you have me do? I want direction. I've been given this tremendous opportunity. It's an amazing gift. What will you have me do? I recognize that my gifts are not my own. I have had a very unique blessing that through this accomplishment, through, the National Teacher of the Year, I got to hear from students, hundreds of students who had gone off to college. And when I hear how amazing and productive they've become, students who struggled as learners, who have maintained consistent employment, students who are, sending me letters and writing me emails and saying, I'm so happy and fortunate to have had you as a teacher. I think that lots of teachers don't get to see that in the way and with the magnitude that I've seen it. So that's something that inspires you and encourages you to, continue. I ask myself, I'm already thinking, how can I do more? At the end of this year, what will I do next? How can I be better? Which is, I'm always in my mind, thinking of when I visited the school, I left and I'm thinking, how would I address this challenge? As a teacher, you're constantly, a teacher teaches, period. So that is my motivation. I believe in the power of education. I know the power of education. I am a product of the power of education, and I just want that to be extended to as many young people as I can come in contact with.
How important is it to use technology in teaching or in learning, especially for learners? Right now we have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all these social media platforms, and of course other professional platforms like Google+, LinkedIn, and everything. How important are they in teaching or learning?
I think that they're critically important, and the teachers who don't evolve or who are unwilling to embrace those changes, I am not as technologically savvy as I would like to be, but I know that if my job is to prepare students to be educated in a global economy, to be productive, to work in this world, I know that that's the world that they're going to encounter. So they have to be prepared adequately for that world. I know that there's a lot of people who discourage technology and the use of technology, and I just think it's unrealistic. That's not their reality. We have a generation of students who have access to so much information in a moment's notice. I think that we have a responsibility to teach them to use that information responsibly, to not leave a negative imprint through their use of technology. And, as times change, we have to adapt. So I am adapting, I am learning, I try to incorporate it as much as possible. But I think the beauty in that is, oftentimes my students know more about technology than I do. So it creates a very unique opportunity for me to learn from them. And it's empowering for them to be able to, teach the teacher or stand in front of the class and present a lesson. So I really try to encourage my students who have strong technology backgrounds to, work in small groups, to teach the class, to share what they know. So it is what it is. It's where we're going.
All right. Lastly, a girl child in Malawi. Mm-hmm. How can you keep motivating her that despite these challenges, you still have a bright future?
I think that's it right there. Your journey is not determined by where you begin. The world is so much bigger than the community that you live in. So if you just keep believing, if you give yourself permission to be bold and almost demand that you deserve a proper education and you deserve all of the opportunities in life, and believe it. I think that is so important, that people remind young girls that you are important, and make them so bold and brazen that when they go out into the world, there's nothing that anyone can say or do to change that. Then they will take risks and they will try things and they will, remain encouraged. But it's a very lonely journey when you're doing it alone, so I think people need to celebrate all the accomplishments as girls, gain progress, as they learn, as they become motivated. Just keep reminding and encouraging them that you're amazing, you rock. This is who you are. I try to do that all the time, and you instill that confidence in them, and then no one can take it away.
All right, Jahana, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me so much. Thank you.
Thank you. That was Mrs. Jahana Hayes, the 2016 National Teacher of the Year in the United States of America. She really is an epitome of an American dream. So girls, dream on. And as she said, you rock. My name is Innocent Mvulayakata. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.